Guys, let's talk about Stop Killing Games. Now, Stop Killing Games, we haven't spoken about probably in about a month or so, give or take, maybe a little bit longer than that. And it's very important to talk about this because there's been a major shift in the whole Killing Games conversation. And this is actually coming out of California. Stop Killing Games movement sees major victories. So we're going to discuss this and talk about what's going on now. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you guys want to see more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join me every single day, 9 p.m. over on the main channel where you can catch me live every single day, 9 p.m. Eastern. I hope to see every single one of you there. Now back to the main video. Last I heard, what's happening overseas is that they basically got it in front of Parliament. I'm not exactly sure where it ended up after that, but it found its way to our shores, and we are starting to see a minor success. Okay, like this is not like it's not law or anything right now, but it's getting to the point where it could potentially be law or some form of a law if we continue and if we get lucky. So let's talk about it. The Stop Killing Games movement has just seen a big success in California, of all places, as the state assembly has passed a bill for the Protect Our Games Act. The bill proposes improving consumer rights around games so that players don't lose access to the titles they bought. You know, I'm going to say one thing real quick. When it comes to like Stop Killing Games or anything like Stop Killing Games, the problem is that digital rights in terms of the actual law is always so far behind the advancement of technology. Meaning like Stop Killing Games right now is trying to solve a problem that started literally at the beginning of the dawn of the age of digital media, where companies selling digital media were trying to essentially sell you licenses so that they cannot, like, you cannot own your games, right? This has been a problem for a very, very, very long time, and only now are we slowly but surely starting to try to make some headway here. But think about all the other things that digital media has brought on us that has just completely fucked with consumer rights because there was no law to protect anybody. There was no law that was actually going to say, hey, you can't do that from a company. So they took well advantage of that. And by the time the law catches up, digital rights are already so far behind and digital media is already so far ahead. It's really hard for the law to keep up with stuff like that. But anyway, we're going to talk about that because at the end of the day, some movement is better than no movement, right? So again, the bill proposes that improving consumer rights around games so that players don't lose access to the titles that they have actually bought. The Stop Killing Games movement has been trying to preserve game access in a variety of locations and is now a major step in the right direction that has been made in California. The only thing I'm concerned about or confused about is how they're going to go about protecting or potentially stopping the killing of a game that's online only. Like, what about MMORPGs, for example? Right, MMORPGs, we already seen what these companies would do to private servers, right? We've seen what Blizzard would do to private servers. They have shut them down in mass recently, Turtle WoW being the most recent one that people were talking about. So they don't exactly like the idea of these games being playable without them being the ones that are in charge. So I just wonder, like, I understand private servers are a different thing. I just wonder how they would go about, allowing an MMORPG to continue past online service. I think MMORPGs will probably be excluded from this potential law, but again, I don't know. We'll see. So California State Assembly member Chris Ward revealed on the Stop Killing Games YouTube channel that a Protect Our Games Act bill, AB 1921, has officially passed the State Assembly. With this, the bill will move on to the State Senate, where Ward says it will be debated in committee in June. The bill proposes that game company provide 60 days notice before shutting down any server-dependent game and will require them to provide a method to either keep playing the games offline or through fan-hosted servers afterward, or in lieu of that, to provide a refund to buyers. That's rough. That is rough. I don't know. Again, there's certain games where I just have to question, how is this going to work? I got to imagine that MMOs have to be excluded by this, right? And forgive me, I haven't read the bill or anything yet, but I have to imagine they have to be excluded. There's no way that they can make a video game like that have an offline or refund people. I just don't see it. I see some of you guys in the chat saying MMOs are excluded any subscription service. Okay, all right, that's fair. All right, so anything that you have to pay money to essentially. But what about free to play? What about free to play games? Are free to play games excluded because you don't actually pay money to get into the game? Probably, right? I says it doesn't include free to play and the like. Okay. All right, interesting. All right, let's keep going. So with this bill to move on to the state Senate, where Ward says will be debated. And then it says, while the bill isn't yet a law, it's a step in the right direction for the movement and could lead to big changes in the game industry if it succeeds. Now, it can lead to big changes. Imagine what kind of games this can actually affect, right? This is probably going to affect video games that have multiplayer modes, but are not necessarily, how do I put it? Multiplayer modes, but are not necessarily like video games that are multiplayer, right? For example, Space Marine 2. Space Marine 2 would be classified as a single-player video game. However, it's not something that it's not something that is necessarily like multiplayer only, or it's not something that's necessarily multiplayer focused, kind of. Although it does have a multiplayer deathmatch style game, and it also has like a horde mode, right, where you can kind of partner with other people. I think I did a couple rounds of that, if I'm not mistaken. So in all actuality, it does have a lot of multiplayer content, but a lot of people would still consider Space Marine 2 to be a single-player focused video game. Sanguine says, issues are if you make an exclusion for subscription-based games, that incentivizes developers to only make subscription-based games. Well, yeah, so Sanguine's right in a way, because what's going to happen is with laws like this, the game studios are not just going to take this lying down, right? They're going to consult with their lawyers, and they're going to try to figure out a way to go through the system, make a loophole, right? And that way they could get what they want without technically breaking the law. And then once one person gets away with it, everybody's going to start doing it. It happens all the time, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if even if this law does in fact pass, that eventually what's going to happen is they'll just find a way to get around it. You know, they'll find a way to try to figure out how to do it. Striker says, what stops a game going from paid to free to play, then turn off the services 60 days later to avoid paying it back? Again, what you just said right there, Striker, would be classified as a loophole. How would they approach that? You know what I'm saying? How would they approach that loophole is a very interesting question overall. So I don't know. I'm very curious about where this is going to go. I would love to see what comes from this. It says that it's going to be debated on fairly soon, so I think that'll be interesting to see how that gets discussed. But outside the United States, the Stop Killing Games movement has been making progress in Europe as well, where back in 2025, the European Parliament Vice President Nikolai Stefanuta expressed support for the movement, going so far as to sign the petition himself. In May 2026, a representative of the European Commission noted that an official response to the petition would arrive before the summer. What will become of it's unclear at this time, as some members of the European Parliament openly supported the movement, while others criticized it. This was the last I heard of it, right? This is why I said earlier in the segment that the last I heard of it was that Parliament kind of, you know, I guess they're waiting to have a response or something along those lines. I didn't realize that the European Parliament Vice President like actually supported the movement by signing it. That's pretty cool overall. I don't know, man. I think that Stop Killing Games as an idea is definitely a good idea. I don't think anybody would disagree with that unless they are probably a developer themselves that wants to get away with not providing service for a video game that they create that people end up purchasing and playing and wanting to continue to play. Like, you have every right to continue to play the content that you paid for, and just because the developer is done with it doesn't mean that you're done with it, right? So they are trying to say, well, they have every right to kill off the game, and I don't believe that to be true. It all depends on the kind of game that it is, and again, the only two games that I could see being a questionable part of this is MMORPGs and free-to-play games, which kind of goes hand in hand, right? Because you could have a free-to-play MMO, or you could have a subscription MMO. Either or. I don't really know how this is going to go. So we'll follow up on this and see what happens. But as of right now, it's in the first phase, which is good. What's this? Stop Killing Games just passed a floor vote. What's this?
Hey, everybody. I'm Assemblymember Chris Ward from San Diego, and I got some big news from the state capitol.
Holy fuck, brother. Holy fuck, brother. Testosterone, my guy. Get on it. That voice is heliumed all the way up. What is going on here?
AB 1921, the Protect Our Games Act, has just passed the legislature with 43 aye votes and bipartisan support. So it's over in the state Senate now.
That's
and we're
good.
going to be able to debate that in committee in the month of June. The idea came to me from a constituent in San Diego who is tired of seeing their games shut down.
The crew delisted from all digital storefronts. Yeah, this is, you know what's crazy? Bro, imagine if we live in a world where Ubisoft is going to be the one that started this movement and created a situation where gamers end up getting more digital rights. Ubisoft of all companies, bro, imagine they're the ones that fucked up so bad that it caused this movement to potentially get legal action. Crazy, man. Crazy. TJAB, yes, it counts. It counts. And I'll explain why in a second. I think that's actually hilarious.
After recent purchases. So if you live in California, be sure to contact your state senator and tell them as a gamer or developer why you care and this matters to you. We're fighting for your consumer protection and making sure that you have a full right and enjoyment to these games.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, keep fighting the good fight, and we'll see how this goes. But as of right now, that's the last update that we have for Stop Killing Games. It is officially on our shores. It is not even just over the pond anymore. It's now in the U.S., and if California does end up setting a precedent, ironically, it's something that could carry over into multiple other states, if not nationwide, at some point. But again, very interesting, and good job, Ubisoft. You did something good for the gaming industry, unironically, even though you guys didn't intend for that to happen. So...